everybody, my name is Jessica Holyfield. I'm a professional dancer, professional dance choreographer, and dance educator based out of the southeast of the United States. And we're taking a look at ATEEZ's Say My Name dance practice. Now, I do know all about this. What has happened from Street Man Fighter, the plagiarism case between Vata and ATEEZ, I know all of it. And I've already talked about that in the Street Man Fighter video that I had of Vata and other leaders showcasing their choreography. I go in about a 20-minute discussion about it on that video. I will tag that video in the description here. How I want to approach this is, instead of talking about that particular situation with this routine here, I really want to treat it as just an analysis of the choreography in its very specific scope. It was released in 2019. I'm going to try to go off of that era, not off of other things that I've heard or seen an excerpt of this track. So I hope you guys are okay with that. I think that's the most respectful thing to do here. And if you're really curious about my thoughts, I will have the video in the description where you can go and glean that, because it does involve both parties. Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take a look at Say My Name, but have a 2019 brain on it. Let's go. That was cool. I've heard this song before. That was cool. I don't know if this feels as refined as it could, as Pirate King was. A little stability thing happening on the left side. This is such an Andre piece, I swear. On that front glide. Oh, that was cool. Yeah. this year, oh my god, how long their songs are. Oh my god. Okay, initial thoughts. This did take me back to their pre-debut stuff. Being very objective, like as objective as I can be, because I'm gonna be very honest with you too. I know Anjay personally, and I know he was a choreographer for this. And a lot of the studios, so there's a couple of the studios that I train dancers at, they go to the convention that he teaches at. So I've been to a couple of conventions already at this point. I've taken a couple of his classes. And I do have some personal thoughts as from an educator to educator. I have some personal feelings about it. No, I'm not going to talk about them here. I don't think it's appropriate. But if you send me a personal message on Patreon, maybe I'll dive a little deeper. We'll see. But out of the just sheer courtesy of the professional relationship that we have, I'm not going to really bring my personal feelings into it. I'm going to try not to. But being very honest, I do know Anjay's choreography structure, and I do know how he does his choreography, and I see how they do his choreography, and they do it similarly to him. But I'm going to say the same thing that I was kind of saying about their pre-debut. This feels like there were some parts of it that were a little bit overly aggressive to the timbre of the track that it was. Having this was nice little start and build up. I like that they had more of like a chill kind of vibe. It does feel a bit placed though, you know, it doesn't feel like they were just waiting around until it was time for them to get up, you know. It doesn't feel as organic as what we were seeing from Pirate King, you know, or seeing from some of their other stuff. It feels very placed, if that makes sense. Yeah, that kickover, notice too, is not as refined and it's not as clean either. This right there, so one of our guys has already kind of he jumps a little bit too early on that part, bringing it through. Yeah, a lot of unison too. That say my name. I really don't know why we had to do say my do. Like I do like hearing the syncopation. Hold on. Dun 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 dun. Like I do. Okay, so I like the, okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. There's certain sequences that we're doing here that it kind of feels like we're being overly complex on the type of track it is. Because it's not even the first, you know, we haven't even finished the first phrase of the first verse. It does feel like we're doing a lot. You know, bump on a say my dun 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 dun. It wasn't that kind of an attack, but it was still do 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 do. And it feels more, we're hitting it on that same kind of staccato, ha, and ha, you know, and it doesn't feel like we have any breath that's happening. Da 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 da, say my name. Like normally you would, on his tone, you would want to think a little bit more grounded, more of a legato kind of groove, but that wasn't legato at all. It was more stagnated within the hits. So that's like my overall note though. That boom, whoa, that was a nice moment. I liked seeing that catch there. I also think the dance floor is slippery. Could be the shoes, it could be something, but I noticed that from a couple of them. They weren't as stable, and I think that's another thing we're going to factor into this too. I like that. Boom, say my name. That was a good moment. I like that. It was a nice speed change. Da 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 da. But do you notice how in sync this is? I'm not talking about like a, I didn't mean it in the sense of synchronicity. I was talking about it in the sense of there's a lot of unison happening, and we're so used to seeing, up until this point, there wasn't this much unison, right? I really feel like we saw more dynamics, more levels represented. It really feels like we're doing more viral. We're vibing on more viral content, or viral variations on this track. And I don't know if they were really pushing challenges or something at this point. I know this was a challenge, but it was 2019, so it was pre a lot of social media platforms popping off. So I do know that as well. Digging through here, notice some of them really pulling with the pushing with the shoulder, and some of them are taking a more chill approach. There's just not as much clarity on the posture of how they're attacking this in ways that I had already been seeing. So I know they can do it. It's this one just doesn't feel like there's as much. It could be a turnaround time thing. It could be because of the movement sequences, because I will be very honest with you, because I have taken out of most choreographers, I've taken from Sienna, I've taken from Keone, I've taken from a lot of choreographers who do choreography for a lot of these groups. I've taken from them before. I've spoken with a lot of them. I am acquaintances with quite a few of them. With Anjay, I am not an acquaintance, but I am a colleague in the industry. And we do know of each other. We do know each other. We are cordial with each other when we see each other. So I have taken enough of his classes to know his choreographic structure. I do think that some of his sequences, being very honest, and I have had this conversation with him before when it comes to teaching students in a convention circuit. These are not students in a convention circuit. This is a K-pop group and he had a skeleton crew, so it's very different. I understand that. But going back to teaching, he is not he's not 17's choreographer. It's like Choi Young-jun, right? How Choi Young-jun choreographs for 17, how he approaches his teaching is very different than how Anje choreographs. Anje is not a teacher, he is a choreographer. There is a difference. And that is something that I'm going to be honest, this is something that you see here. This is Anje's choreography. You do not see, he did not quite teach this. Does that make sense? They had to teach it to their bodies themselves, and this is the result of that. This is being like very, This is me being trying to be very realistically objective and honest about it. You know, I don't want it to come across either like I dislike it. I like the choreography, don't get me wrong. I do think some of the sequences are a bit overly complex for what they're being asked to do, honestly. And I think that some of the movements a little bit too loud for the track, and some of the viral moves are not aging this routine well. Pirate King aged very well because a lot of the movements weren't tailored to a viral context. But here, there's a lot of movements that are based in that, and so that's not going to age, especially not effectively if you have these moves done to certain like very predictable parts of your music. So even there with the hand, boom, boom, boom. Not everybody had their hand in the same place. So that's just my overall note, though. It also feels that a lot of their torsos are a bit restrictive. It could be up for the fact that the floor is slippery. I would say his shoes are the most slippery. We notice him slip up the most. Him having this moment. There is a lot of this right here, this whole running situation. This does remind me of, oh my gosh, hit the quan, brand new feet in the, please watch your step because I'm feeling myself. That's what that, throw a flag on that part. Hit the quan. It's a very quan-y thing to do, you know. That was really nice, him having that moment with the marches. So this was... But do you hear it? Like, this is a great example. Do you feel how aggressive they're attacking it? And no, I don't think it's because of ATEEZ. Because I've seen them do more chill stuff. Or maybe it is ATEEZ doing it. Because now that I think about it, I haven't seen any of their new stuff. I'm only going off of their pre-debuts. They can do legato grooves. I know they can. I've seen it. But when it comes to this type of track, I really feel like we may be attacking it a little bit too hard. Even though it's in sync, especially in the lower half. Very impressive by that. But if you look here, it's very, yeah, da-da-da-da, boom, boom. Like, we're hitting this, but it's supposed to be a build, right? So we're kind of doing the opposite. We're being very combative on a build-up type of a sound. Now, that was nice. Now, that was better. That was nice, but notice not everybody was doing the same thing. So it was a little bit trickier for us to really enjoy that moment. That synchronicity would have really helped this piece a lot. And we're seeing a lot of hiccups in the upper body specifically. That slide through was really cool. But also when you look at the formation and how they finish, I don't know if that was necessary. Does that make sense? I think part of it could be because of the floor. That part right there is another example. Dun, 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 dun. It felt very jerky in comparison to place. Could be a technical thing, could be whatever. Diving through, that was a really cool head isolation roll that he did. That was a nice moment. And he hits it over, boom, and he brings it all the way down. That was a nice moment. So this build-up is really nice. I do like that build-up a lot. I will say that's probably my favorite part so far. Say my name, say my name. We were a little bit off. My guy right here was just a little bit off on his upper body there, but this is really nice. That turn, that was sick. Name. Matched that tone brilliantly. Say my name, say my name. That was great too. That whole little chorus right there, chef's kiss. Love that. Love that. Da, 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 da. I think it's just little moments of whenever they have it's the moments of the in-betweens that I feel like could be a little bit more refined, especially when you have a feature. Sometimes there's a difference between a feature adding to or taking away from. I would say how he's doing this right now, it doesn't feel like he's adding to everybody else, but a lot of it may stem from the fact that they're all at the same level. So if he was a little bit higher and everybody else was a little bit lower, it would be a little bit easier for us to see him kind of divert a little bit. But because technically he is in our center, but everybody's doing the same thing, regardless if he's the point or not, we're going to expect him to do it the same way or similarly in the same way. So that's just my overall note on that. Yep, and that's the move in question. We're going to talk about the head ISO. I love whenever people add something where the pull isn't just from the hips. Because however you can do a forward glide like that is you have a choice. You can really go from the hips and allow the body to kind of reverberate or kind of be pulled by it. But how they chose to do it is this kind of collaborative between the front part of the foot with the pull with the ISO. I'm such a sucker for head ISOs though. You know, so going from this move here. Hey, that, hey, oh, boom. I really wish that was cleaner. The range was all the same. So this tie-in straight into this really legato groove that honestly, I really feel like we saw. I wish we had a little bit more of this in the beginning. That pull through right there. Boom, da, 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 da. And I like the triple on that. It's just nice. Yeah, so that was a really fun moment. Do I think that everybody did the exact same way? No, but I think that they got the visual off enough. So I was fine with that. That part, da 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 da. Some people choose to use their chest. Some are using their hips. That needed to be clarified. So this was fun, but notice he had a little. He kind of stumbled a little bit on his feet to kind of set it up. So I talked about this with one of XG's tracks because I'm just now at this point in time had just looked at their debut, so they're very fresh on my mind. But I actually made this very important note that I'm going to say here as an example of why it matters. So whenever you're having a feature have their moment, regardless if it's subtle or very extroverted, whenever you are supposed to not be a focal point, your absence of movement contributes to the focal point just as much as your movement does. Now, contribution can swing either way. It can swing positively or negatively. A lot of times, dancers who are in this particular scope or field of being in a routine, whenever they're there and they're holding position, sometimes they don't see the big picture because they're a dancer, not a choreographer in that role. So when you're a dancer in a formation, just because you have a mirror doesn't mean that you really see the full picture. If you filmed it on a camera, you would be shocked at the amount of times dancers would be completely caught off guard by how clean something looks because all they feel or care about is how they feel doing it. Does that make sense? So I think going here to this in this example is because we saw a little bit of staggering happening when it was obviously supposed to be very still in order for us to have this really nice moment of being very clear on where our feature is. And I'm not going to chalk it up to, I'm just going to assume it's a situation with the room. I really feel like that's what's happening here. I think that contributes in not the best way of whenever your feature wants to be showcased. So that's my overall note. That was a nice moment there when it goes, has a little moment, and then they build it back in. So they did a shoot. That just reminds me of their very first, their pre-debut. And going back to kind of what I said in their pre-debut, I kind of already touched on it. So, and I hate sounding. I hate sounding so negative, and I know I'm not coming across like overly negative, but I really feel, being very honest, that we've kind of taken a step back a little bit from ATEEZ as a group. I really feel like we're kind of reverting back to kind of the pre-debut vibes. And I had already talked about what about those vibes or what about that content was not working for ATEEZ. And here I feel like some of this move, not all of it, some of it. So I'm not discrediting Anjay at all. There's a reason why he was asked to work on multiple tracks. I think there's some really freaking great moments in this track. Trust me. And that's not what I'm referencing at all. I'm just saying some of these movements, just like with Scott Forsyth's choreography or with Melvin Timpson's choreography, there's certain pockets that you're supposed to do in it. And with Anjay, he has a very interesting pocket that he explores. And I think with this here, I feel that we're not quite I don't know if it's Anjay's pocket that doesn't vibe with the type of track this is or what, because they are replicating his pocket well. I just don't think it's clean. But also Anjay's pocket is difficult to make clean as well. And I know what's really funny about this, because I just realized this for myself. I just referenced Anjay's pocket, but I'm not gonna talk about never mind. I'm not gonna talk about that. So the nice little whoa there, of course, really dates this though. hitting it through that swing and swing and swing and building it up. It does feel like we're trying to really create more of an angst within the choreography versus allowing it to continue to build. It feels like we're not really building to go anywhere. But I'd say the courses are really well done though. I do like the courses. This was nice. Boom, da 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 da. With the head, some of the head range was a little off. Ooh, yeah, da 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 da. That worked really well because when you hear that, ooh, yeah, it goes, ooh, yeah. Like that actually helps. And it doesn't date it that much as much because it felt like it was being used in proper context of the type of track it is. So that was actually a pretty good moment. That was good too. And then it goes boom, yeah, da da da. Ooh, yeah, that was good. Here, I know they're trying to do syncopation with the claps. I don't know if they were on time though. No, they were not. So it's little details like that. Yeah, I think it's because it's not as refined, which is why it feels like we took a step back in time a little bit. It kind of feels like this is what I was expecting when they debuted, not Pirate King. Do you see what I mean? And that's why I hence my honesty. But I do know there's going to be some pretty insane routines that are going to be coming my way. So I know that going in. This is not, not all groups have amazing choreography. Even 17's got a couple that I think could have done some heavy refinement and it would have really, really carried a little differently. The marching there too, even here, notice how it feels very restrictive and how they're building it up. It doesn't feel like we're engaging or using our torso at all there. So it doesn't feel like we're building or going anywhere. Also notice for our levels, we're not really doing anything with those either. And that's not helping with the build. Because a lot of times going from a low to a high really helps naturally build because you think going up a mountain, more triumphant, things like that. So I don't feel like we're framing the feature, but it doesn't feel like we're using this opportunity as effectively to really frame that feature. You know what I mean? So, but moving on here. Yeah, even there, it's just boom, dun, dun, dun. Just it kept very midline versus down to high or high to low. This was nice for that build through. Do, do, do. Dun, 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 dun. So that was really nice syncopation there. Really nice and clean right there. But if you notice, everybody was nice and tall. And then when that switch happened, they were still, which helped me see the switch. But you know what would have made me see the switch even better is if they would step, then they drop. All they needed to do was go drop. I could really see that switch. Bada bing, bada boom, Levels could really do this dance some wonders. I'm telling you right now. That right there, this move right here is, you know what it is too? I'm going to be so real with you. Some of these, this is why this is bleeding Anjay for me. Because every time I've learned his choreography, I feel like that move's been in it in some way, shape, or form. We'll see how many of these Easter eggs overlap. Here's another thing that I want to keep in mind whenever I say this too. Whenever you do really viral movements, and they're doing quite a few. This is not the first time we've seen them do very viral movements. We saw it in one of their performances. And I made a lot of these notes there. I say the reason why I always tend to kind of just be mindful when you choose to use a large quantity of it, like pretty much what we're seeing here is an example of that, because what happens is it's taking away the memorability about it. It just feels a little bit more superficial because a lot of the content that has become viral, that's what ends up happening. There's an oversaturation of it, so it's not as creative and it doesn't come across as theirs. That's another thing. Whenever you think viral, a lot of people are, and it's just really funny. I'm talking about it with this piece specifically. There's certain parts of this choreography that are very iconic and very enjoyable to watch. But there's other parts of this choreography where I'm like, if they interchanged that with something that wasn't viral, it would have been a better moment, or it would have aged better. It also would have felt more individualized and tailored to them. It didn't feel so social media influenced, if that makes sense. It kind of felt like there's a little agenda behind this. Even though, regardless if that's the case or not, you can't discredit that when people use viral movements, there's sometimes a part of our intention is to go viral, or part of our intention, I'm not talking about ATEEZ, I'm just saying in general, it's you want to make something that people can relate to on a viral side. So this is, remember though, like I'm not super married to any of these perspectives. There's a couple things that I'll pretty double down on, like relationship, your musicality. Like that's a pretty double down thing. I'll stay true to. But when it comes to preference on viral moves, whether to have them, not have them, I think it's totally fine to have them in your pieces. But I think there's a way you can do it that's tasteful, that still maintains individuality. And I think that's the thing that we're struggling with here, is that it's just, I've already kind of stated it, so I'll try not to beat a dead horse on it, but that's just my overall note that I'm noticing here, that I'm really hopeful that we get to see some growth from. Now we're back to there. He needed, I really think he needed to refine the exit portion of that wave. Bring it in. It was really nice using his fingers, making sure that it was clear, but as he exited, it wasn't quite as clear as it could have been. That was nice there too. When he hits it, he throws it up, they all snap their head up. That was a really good call. Yeah, say my name. But notice, because we hadn't seen a huge wide range of levels or usage of the rock going from low to high, it's hard for me to enjoy as much as I feel like I would have been able to this particular sequence. Yeah, say my name. You know, having a wide range would have really made that look cool. I also think he slipped just a little bit, which was strike 2 of why I think the room's slippery. Yeah, and then also seeing here, yeah, say my name, not clear. Is it a legato? Is it more of a staccato? Is it more on that bass? It's not super clear on the torsos, which is why it doesn't look as clean. Even with the arms too, we're letting the arms kind of go because we're focusing so much on the body. I like that pull. That was a really cool transition. Just wasn't as clean as it needed to be. Nice little milli there. Do-do-do-do-do. Boom. And I like that bass to transfer the milli over. That's a good example of actually taking a milli instead of just doing it. Like you hit it and then you vary it. That's really good. That's good ways to do it. But notice some of them really let their head go and some of them take it in more isolation. So that would be clarify how you want to do it, especially if it's a unison section and you're showcasing, especially if you're going to do it as a challenge. I think that's what they chose to do with this part. This was their part of their challenge. You want to make sure that everybody's on the same page, because you don't want there to be a discrepancy on whether or not they're doing their head the correct way, because a lot of people ask a lot of questions or they want to do it perfectly. And that's going to help with the perfectionists in the world, is making sure, am I using my head? Am I supposed to tilt it? Things like that, because they want to replicate as a form of support to this group. They want to make sure that they do justice to it. So that's why it's important for them to make sure that they have it in check on what's happening with their head. It was way more in check the first time we did it, but just really notice the angle is a little bit more off here, right? So it's just my overall note on this. Now we're back to the milli. So we kind of already did that already before that started the verse. So it did kind of, because you know we've seen very complex execution from them before, so we know they can do it. And I think it's okay to ride different concepts. I think this is what it is too. I think it's totally fine for a group to dive into various concepts. I personally don't think this style of concept is as practical for them in showcasing their individuality, or what makes them really good at what they do in comparison to when you saw Pirate King. I think it makes sense. Like with Pirate King, there was such a depth to it in the sense of how they elevated the energy, because the song helped carry with that and they matched it. And a lot of times you don't see groups do that. So they had a really nice innovation in how they attacked that sound context there. Here, it feels, it feels a little bit more mainstream. And I know sometimes choices are made that kind of help. You want your group to have more visibility, so it makes sense why you choose these types of choices. Absolutely fine. I'm not dogging on it at all. Please note that. I'm not saying that this is bad. No. This is not bad at all. It's still very clean. But also, it's just not, when you think about the expectation they set at their debut, this is not quite at the caliber of the cleanliness, hence why it feels like we took a step backwards, or there's something off about this one in comparison to the other ones that we did. And I'm just trying to name a couple reasons as to why that may be. Mostly from an empathetic lens, because I have a really rare perspective on this, because I've actually taken this content from this choreographer before. Not this exact line of content, but I understand this movement quality because I've taken it for years, because we go to the same convention for years. You know what I mean? So my body has years of exposure to this style from this choreographer. So this bridge recites, this is honestly one of the best moments because it was so chill and matched the energy well. And this proves to me we know how to do legato. Right here, I do feel like we were a bit staggered or not quite, more sporadic on the lower half of the body on that, so it didn't feel quite as smooth in the transition from him. Go down, we walk through. That was nice having that moment, boom, not pull, having the reveal, great choice. That right there, oh, that was nice, but also it may have felt a little bit too loud for that, but also it still worked though. Does that make sense? And that's more of a preference thing. It could be because I'm not hearing the full audio. There's not an audio overlay on this, so I can't really feel the full depth of the track. That's another thing you need to note for me too. A lot of these, this is my first time hearing this track 100% of the way through. Not all of them, but some of them are like this. So I may be missing some really key timbres or tonal colors that really signify some of these choices. Yeah? That was nice too, as it go boom through, boom, and you see the peel of the fingers. I love little choices like that. That was also cool too. Do-do-do-do, boom. Yes to that. Love that. That there too, if you notice that not everybody, let me see. I would say he went pretty big there, but it does feel like he was more of a feature, so I think that was fine. That right there, notice that this is a really good example. I need you to watch these two. I'm going to play it again. He hit from his shoulder, he hit from his elbow. Those are two very different ways of executing the same thing because they're both on the ground, so you can't chalk it up to, oh, they're on different levels, so they have to execute it differently. They are doing two completely different hits right there, and that's why it doesn't look clean or it doesn't look refined. Look. Yeah. And I feel like they're all supposed to do their own dynamic, but there is a way to do it that's tasteful, that matches the level that you're trying to go for. It's, you know, and it goes back to this. I've said this about pretty much every group I've reacted to. There's always been one routine, one or two routines. And I don't feel like I'm going to be talking in this way about ATEEZ very often. I think this is going to be one of the few that I do approach or I do talk about a routine like this. I do think that with just the overall, like every group's going to have a routine or two that there's just something, there's just a lot of miscommunication on the physicality side. But the miscommunications are more so the pronunciation of the slang movements, not the actual movement itself. Does that make sense? So what I mean by that is there's a lot of these movements are like slang to the fundamental, but the fundamental's there. You know what I mean? So I think that how they're hitting it, the hit is fine, but how they're hitting it in collaboration with each other is what makes it off. And that's the kind of stuff that you have to refine, and it's the most tedious portion of cleaning that most people hate. For me, I enjoy it because I feel like I get to talk to my students the way that I talk to you guys here, which is kind of like a double-edged sword sometimes, but they still like me. We deal with it. But that's my big note on this. I really like the fact that we have more of a breathability through this section because I feel like we really needed that, but also the song called for it, so it would have been a little bit overkill if they were popping off as aggressive like they were in the beginning here. So I think it was a good choice. Say my name, say my name. I like that. I just think that's fun. It's just, I like whenever they have that kind of energy. This is significantly cleaner. I really like this section because if you notice, their lines are in check, the energy's in check, the range of the arms are in check. So this is probably the cleanest section, I'm going to tell you right now, that we've seen from the entire thing. A turn, which was nice. The turn through. Joe Cunham. Yep, and I would say one of them didn't quite rotate 100% of the way through, so I just didn't notice that, but we got lucky because he had somebody covering him. So it does help there. Now, doom, 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 doom. Notice that some of them didn't fully commit to that side twice through. Yeah, boom, 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 boom. But I love the fact that we got to see multi-tiered levels. Eat 'em on, eat 'em on. That's fun, having the build up from my first level and then having them build it on. I have no issue with doing the same groove a few times, especially if we're going to use levels to help carry it. That's fine. Pulling through. That was nice. Boom, and he pulls it. They all head up. Those are the types of things that I think AT does very well, is when you have these little pop interruption moments. And I think I noted that in one of their other tracks. I think it was with either Treasure. It was with Treasure or it was with Pirate King. It was one of those two because those are the only two that I've seen of their actual work at this point in time. I do feel that with this, that they do a really good job on the interruption stuff, or the things that you don't quite see often. But on the things that you end up seeing a lot more often, it kind of feels, I guess, that we don't. that could also be another reason why I feel like with ATEEZ, they thrive on the individuality, you know, but they need to do content that caters to individuality, not uniformity in a social media aspect. I think that's what I'm gleaning from this. And that doesn't mean they need to stay away from this concept entirely. I do feel that they do a really good job on the risk-taking interruptions of content with polyrhythms in comparison to variations of viral movement, if that makes sense. They're just two different styles, and I feel like one of them reads more ATEEZ than the other. And I'm just trying to find the best way to articulate it. Maybe the more I watch them, the more I can really glean that, but that's just my overall note I'm seeing here. That pull through, that was, notice how he tried to come up from that. That's why I think it's slippery. Watch his shoes, he goes down. Yeah, so he like had to catch it and then he had to slide in. So that was like I'm trying to catch myself from actually falling, not a I lost my balance. Does that make sense? I think it's his shoes. And they finish up with their head. So was this a bad performance? No, it was freaking great. It was great. I do think that all the things that I said, I'm not going to sit here and say that I am completely looking at this 1,000% objective. I think that's low-key impossible because I know, and it has, funnily enough, it has absolutely nothing to do with the plagiarism case. It has everything to do with the choreographer, because there's a good chance I'm probably going to be not struggling, but really having to navigate through knowing who the choreographer is, because I personally know him, and navigating through some of his isms that he portrays on this group and seeing and translating it in a way that, like, I want to see Anjay grow in this choreography sequences, because I feel like this was a good start for him in this realm. I don't know how much K-pop work he's done. I hope that we get to see like an elevation of either how he sets choreo. I don't know if they just skeleton crewed it and then they had an in-house team that kind of taught ATEEZ, because that's very different than the choreographer coming himself. But also I know how Anjay teaches. And so I'm being very honest, there's a lot of fitting for yourself. There's a sense of camaraderie and relationship when it comes to actually learning the choreography. He doesn't teach it, he demos it, and he just says 5, 6, 7, 8, and he gives very broad. He is not Choi Young-jun from 17's choreographer team. He is not. They're very different, and I think both are fine. But I think in this context, because they're so young, I would hope that we get to see if there's moments of Anjay growing as a choreographer and as a teacher with this group, because I know he ended up growing a lot in the convention circuit, just based on my limited conversations I've had with him, to seeing the natural consequences of some decisions that were made. So that's my notes there, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing some of their next work through this era, because I want to know, I needed to figure out for myself, being real, if some of where I'm coming from is from that lens of just my personal relationship with him, or if it's genuinely just the choreography on ATEEZ. I need to kind of watch a couple to really figure that out for myself. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to be very honest. I have a feeling that this one may be one of my most subjective ones, but it has nothing to do with the plagiarism case or anything like that. Once again, I will put that whole thing in the description of this video, because I already tackled it extensively in another video in regards to Vatsa as well. And I'm hoping, I'm going to be very real with y'all. I'm hoping that I get to grow in this process to learn to appreciate Anjay's choreography in a different way, because there's been a couple instances where it has been hard for me to really appreciate his work in his context because of how he chose to teach it to my students. And I'm very protective of who teaches my kids, because I'm very particular in how I set up their curriculum, how I teach them, how I want them to utilize their toolkit. So I know I come from like a mama bear mindset too, and so I can be very potentially critical of convention teachers a lot of times, especially if they are not coming at teaching from an empathetic lens on their students, like how I try to come and look at these videos from an empathetic lens. So I'm just being very honest with you guys on that, because I feel like just like I've been able to talk about the really positive things or the really like credential heavy things, I feel like this kind of stuff is very relevant too. Just like I'm a human and I have human feelings about human things in the dance industry. And sometimes, regardless of how objective you get trained, you can't escape it sometimes. That's why I make certain choices I make when it comes to what I watch. Not in this regard, but that's why there's certain circuits that my kids don't perform on because I'm affiliated with, and I don't think it would be healthy for me. I wouldn't be able to properly adjudicate them in those circuits because I'm a part of them. Do you know what I mean? So that's really where I'm coming from on that. I'm very much looking forward to seeing honestly the next choreography that affiliates with Anjay, because I want to see the differences between them, because I know that ATEEZ brings it. They bring the energy, they bring it. I think that I think there was a little bit of a power struggle in my own heart and in my own mind while I was analyzing this too. So I do apologize to the fan base if it did feel like I was a bit curt or a bit blunt or a bit overly honest or critical. And I know that I wasn't as critical as I could be. I think I've been critical about other things a lot more, like the Street Fighter series. But I do, I'm still very new to the movement quality context of ATEEZ. So I want you guys to know that I am trying to have an empathetic lens on it without coming across as projecting my own personal feelings, because that's not why you guys watch a lot of my videos. You choose to watch these out of support for ATEEZ, of course, but you also support you support the educational side that I try to bring to it as well. But you just got to see me be a little bit more human today. So I apologize if that was something that you weren't wanting. But c'est la vie, you know, it is what it is. And I know that I'm going to grow in this process, which is probably a really good reason why we're doing an ATEEZ marathon, because I get to grow just like you guys in the discussions. So if you want to see more ATEEZ, because there's going to be more, any XG, K-pop, things of the like, I have that all over Patreon. It is always early released on Patreon before it makes its way to YouTube. If you're seeing this on YouTube, I'm Jess, and I hope I was helpful, like I had said, and yeah, I definitely look forward to the next video with you guys. I will catch you on the flip side. Bye.